It's been 2.5 years since I created my experimental Carnivorous plants rock garden featuring pumice stone. It's been so much fun watching the plants grow and develop. At the same time, I've also learned some important lessons along the way. Lessons, for example, on how to best water this type of arrangement. Now, if you're thinking about creating this type of garden, I've got some good news because I will be featuring some videos in the future explaining on how to exactly make this type of arrangement. Hopefully those videos will help you. But in the meantime, let's have a look at some of those insights that I've learned. So this is the reason why I'm so happy with the results of this garden. Here are tropical sundews, Drosera burmannii, and they've really spread here by themselves because they do produce fertile seeds through self-pollination, and wherever those seeds land, come up new plants, and there's basically a carpet of these sundews all over the place. And together with the plants themselves and the actual flowers that they produce, they really do produce a startling effect. You can see that purple flower there coming up beautifully against that pumice stone background. So these sundews here have basically just been planted in peat moss and propagating sand. That's it. And you can see here, hopefully, that there's all these clover here as well. I'll let that sort of grow because I did see a 4-leaf clover the other day, so I thought, oh yeah, bit of luck there. Here are some of these mosses growing. So I've put various types of mosses in here as well, and they've come up as well. There's even, see in there, see this type of moss down back here, that's sphagnum moss, and I'm so happy to see that because I put that in there as well originally. Just put that inside the pumice stone. That's come up nicely. Now these, let's have a look. These T-shaped, this large sundew here, that's a Drosera burmannii T form, and that's the one that's produced these beautiful flowers up here. Those flower stalks, oh, I don't know, they're about, say, 45, 50 centimetres high. So it really is gorgeous to see them all come up beautifully. And of course, how could I miss this? These are two plants that I started off with, the Venus's Flytraps, and I placed them in pumice stone. So there are two, the pumice stone there, and there's another one over here. And you can see just how they've grown beautifully. They've really filled out, and you can see all these brand new traps coming out. And oh yeah, I'm so happy to see that. And just looking at all the interactions here going on, I just love it. You see these sundews over here that are just sort of clinging onto the edge, and I love how the peat moss over time just sort of creates these stain marks. It sort of produces a beautiful wild natural effect, which is something that I've always loved. It reminds me of when I was a kid growing up, discovering sundews in the Blue Mountains. Keep bringing it up, but yeah, it really is. This garden here really does remind me of those memories. So I just want to share with you what I wanted to achieve by experimenting with this miniature rock garden. So as I said in my intro, this is made from pumice stone. So I've added some pumice stones in there. There's actually 3, not 2. I said 2 before, but I've just realised there's 3. And within those pumice stones, I've drilled holes and I've just placed carnivorous plants such as these tropical sundews. I placed these Venus's flytraps in there, and I also placed various types of mosses, including sphagnum moss. I basically wanted to find out just how well carnivorous plants grow within that pumice stone. And within those 2.5 years, it's, as I said, it's been so much fun watching them grow. But not only grow, they've really flourished, and it's exceeded my wildest expectations. There's something about pumice stone which plants love. Apart from looking beautiful, and of course it's a natural volcanic rock, the actual rock itself keeps the roots nice and cool. And I think it's because there's a lot of porous material within that pumice rock, so it does absorb water, but there's also a lot of air in there as well. So together that sort of through evaporation cools down the roots of the plant that's sitting in that pumice stone, and that's the reason why these plants have really grown so well. And as I said, it really has exceeded my wildest expectations, and yeah, can't wait to experiment with more and more types of plants. The second thing I wanted to prove to myself was just how well carnivorous plants grow in containers without any drainage holes. So this is a tray, not a pot, and this tray here has no drainage holes down the bottom. So ordinarily, here at my nursery, I grow all my plants in pots with drainage holes down the bottom. Now I've got a wicking material, a watering system, where I have wicks from the bottom of the pot going into a water source down below. But of course, for my valued customers, I always say that the easiest way to water your plant is simply by placing your pot in a tray of water. And it's a very simple method, but it works really well. The water is sucked up through capillary action into the peat moss. That keeps the peat moss nice and damp, which keeps the plant happy as well. But as I said, I wanted to find out, because there is a bit of info on the internet now saying that you shouldn't grow carnivorous plants in containers, pots without any drainage holes. The reason being is that they will become waterlogged. You get bacterial buildup in the soil, and eventually they'll die. So I know that carnivorous plants come from boggy environments where the peat moss is constantly moist. It's kept moist by, not all the time, but a lot of times it's through underground springs. So they don't mind getting their roots wet. So I thought, well, I'm going to prove to myself whether that statement is true. Do they grow, or whether they grow in waterlogged environments? So that's why I started off with this tray here. I put some propagating sand and peat moss in here, just as I do with all my plants here at my nursery. And I just started off with a couple of sundews here. I put some moss that I broke from the top section of some of the pots from my pot plants as I repotted them, and I simply put them in there as well. I also put a little bit of sphagnum moss, and then I also put in some of those pumice stones, drilled some holes in them, put the plants in there, put some sphagnum moss in there, and just found out how they went. Well, I'm glad to say that these plants here, as you can see, they've flourished. They really have, and they've proven to me that they do grow in waterlogged environments. And yeah, so if you are thinking about doing this type of arrangement, give it a go, because it does work. Another thing that I wanted to say is that with this type of arrangement, because it's a tray, I've had to water this from the top. I can't put this tray within another tray full of water because there are no holes down the bottom. There'd be no way for this garden to be watered. So that's why I've used my simple bucket arrangement, which I'll show you soon. And that's how I've watered this garden from the top. So this here is my watering device. This is how I water my rock garden. I placed the tray over here underneath these wicks over here, and those wicks have been placed into this white bucket. And of course, that's where all the water is. You can see it's quite green there, and that's because there's a bit of algae in there. And that's because this bucket here allows a bit of light through, being white, and that's why there's algae in there. There's also some mosquito larvae in there as well. That's because I've had to cut away a little bit of this lid here to allow those wicks to come through. And of course, it's through capillary action that the water gets transferred down those wicks and eventually ends up in the garden, thereby watering it. And up here on top, I've drilled a hole, so whenever it does rain, the water does go through there just to fill it up. And yeah, a simple device, but it does work. So why have I used my water bucket arrangement? Well, I really love the simplicity of it. I love the fact that all you've got to do is refill that water. I use rainwater. You fill that bucket up with water, and then Mother Nature takes care of the rest through capillary action through those wicks, and drop by drop your garden ends up getting watered. Now you may be asking, why didn't I end up just putting this garden under my tap? Well, here in Sydney, Australia, and I've done testing through my TDS meter, the tap water here has too many dissolved salts in it. So as you may know, carnivorous plants can't tolerate too many dissolved salts in the water. And if I would have just put this under my tap, then the water would have ended up eventually killing all these plants. And of course, because I don't have any drainage holes down here on the bottom of this tray, the salts would eventually build up, and there wouldn't be no way of me flushing out those salts through the bottom of the tray. Now, if you have if you're lucky enough to have a mains water supply that has low dissolved salts, then by all means place this under your tap, or you can even use a drip irrigation system. All of those would work really well. So that's why I've ended up using my simple water bucket arrangement. Now, whilst it's basic, it works, it does have its limitations. The limitations are that once the water level drops below, say, 2 centimeters from the top of your bucket, it doesn't transfer water so regularly onto your garden. And when the water level drops even further, the wick may even stop sometimes, or it drips very, very slowly. So I've had to sort of think there's got to be a better way of actually watering this garden, and replenishing that bucket, especially during those hot summer days. We get temperatures here sometimes over 40 degrees Celsius here in Sydney, Australia. I end up sometimes replenishing that bucket, maybe say 3, 4, even 5 times a day. So one valuable lesson that I've learned is that as beautiful as this arrangement is, and as creative as it is, if you're spending too much time looking after your garden, then that robs you of valuable time to actually enjoy it. So hence why I've been forced to rethink about how I can water this garden here. So the solution I've devised to better water my garden here is to drill holes on the bottom of this plastic tray. I'll then place this tray into another tray of water. The garden will then be watered through capillary action by absorbing water from the bottom up into the peat moss. Of course, that's in complete contrast to how I was watering before through that water bucket method, and that's where I was watering from the top down. So what I hope to achieve by drilling holes down the bottom here is to water this garden less frequently by placing this tray into another tray full of water, giving that tray good depth of water, say about 3/4 of the height of this tray here. There's going to be plenty of water in there to sustain this garden even during those hot summer days. So it's all about trying to get my time back a bit more, especially now that I've got my nursery here to look after with all my other plants. By doing this, I'm getting my time back and also being able to enjoy the garden more. And of course, I'm hoping as well that the plants themselves will still maintain their vibrant growth, even though I have changed the way the garden has been watered. So now that I've drilled the holes down the bottom of this tray, I'm going to be placing it into another tray. Of course, this tray doesn't have any holes in it because it's going to be containing the water. And that water will of course be watering this garden here. So let's just place that inside the larger tray carefully. And that sits in there beautifully. So what's important here is that the height of the inner tray is similar to the outer tray's height. Okay, I think the outer tray height's just a little bit taller, but that should be okay still. I was going to drill some holes into this outer tray to act as a drainage whenever it did rain. Whenever it does rain, water may get over the inner garden here a little bit, but it won't completely swamp it, because as I said, the heights of the trays are very similar and there should be no problem there when it does rain. Looking a lot more presentable without the white bucket. Here I'm filling the tray with rainwater until it gets to 3/4 the height of the inner tray.